Okay, I want to give a sample presentation in the style that you are supposed to give for your final presentation, the exposition assignment. Um, I'm going to give a presentation on apples, and I'm basically just going to follow the outline that I sent to explain my previous knowledge, what I've gained, and then what my conclusions are. Your presentation should be between 5 and 8 minutes, and should cover the territory that you have researched in your presentation. So I'll go ahead and get started. My dog is going to help me out, and we'll go from there. So first of all, before I became a fruit grower, did any research on growing food, I just thought that apple trees grew wherever they were. You put a seed in the ground and then apple trees came up. And I think that's a really common misconception about how fruit is grown in America. And the more I've learned, the more I understand how wildly wrong that is, especially concerning apples. Um, there are wild apple trees that grow from seeds, but the apples that we eat are not done that way. So what I've learned, the new information that I've gained is I have learned that apple orchards are intentionally grown, and usually they have one or two different varieties of apples that they grow. They start off with a nurse tree, which is the root stock, and then they graft the kind of apple that they want onto that root stock. So if they want a Honeycrisp, they graft a Honeycrisp branch onto the root stock. If they want a Cosmic Crisp, as we read about, they graft a Cosmic Crisp branch onto the rootstock. And it can even be more complicated than that. They can have like a mature tree, and they can top the tree. So like if this is my tree, my hand is my tree, they can top all the branches off and then put new starts into the places where the old branches were, and then new fruit, new trees, new kinds of apples will grow from those points where you cut the branches off. So how you can grow apples is crazy wild and awesome. The perspectives that I've gained from this is understanding that apples, another thing I've learned, apples are more genetically diverse than humans. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of different kinds of apples, but we are only familiar with a couple dozen, if that. So I feel like that's very limiting. It helps me understand the food industry and how that is so controlled. It helps me understand that we're not very near to our food, and a lot of times because we're not near to our food, it doesn't help. It doesn't allow us to understand how difficult it is to grow food, and how challenging it can be to come up with a product that's so well packaged and pleasing to the eye, which is very rarely found in nature in an organic kind of way. So those are some things that I found and that helped me round out my understanding of the topic. And there's so much more that I could go into about organic food and pest control and herbicides and all the things that are put on food in order to be presented with a product that is very polished looking and very whole looking, the kind of food that we're used to seeing in the grocery store. And since I've started growing food, I really understand that it's quite difficult to have an organic product without using pest control or chemical sprays to produce food that looks really traditional like you find in the grocery store. So I've understood that the challenge of growing food and how manufactured that has become, kind of industrialized. And that's not even to mention bees and how we ship bees to these orchards to get them to pollinate the apples and the different foods that we're growing, and how these orchards are huge and mass produce things, and that's where our food comes from. It's very distant from what we know or what we think of as farmers growing food. So there's a lot of information there. I could go on and on. My final thoughts on the issue are, how do we get back to a more local food system? Is that sustainable in our economy? Would that be helpful in the long run for people's health, for the local economy's health, the monetary systems that we have in place, if those kind of broke down and stopped happening, would that ultimately be good for our society? Some things that I definitely challenge how our food system is currently being run. I think that there's a lot of waste and a lot of chemicals and a lot of byproducts that come into our atmosphere and our earth and our food that are really harmful to humans, and we have to kind of manufacture our whole life in order to get food to look nice and to be what we expect it to be, and it's really, really distant from us, which is ultimately a problem, not understanding how we get the food that we want. And my conclusion is that I'm happy to grow food, and that's something that I want to continue doing in my life. So, yeah. I hope that this is helpful, and as far as the presentation, I'm not really sure how long it was, but my videographer here says it was 5 minutes-ish. So hopefully that's a good sample of how you might do things. I'm just looking for like an explanation, a verbal explanation of how you're going to present your topic as an explanation to your friends or to your classmates. So I hope this helps.